A love story in sorrow. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in a lush valley surrounded by towering mountains, there lived a young woman named Anna. She wasn't only beautiful, with her long chestnut hair and kind green eyes, but she was known throughout the village for her compassionate heart and quiet strength. Anna, at 25, had already faced more hardship than many experienced in a lifetime. When she was just a child, tragedy struck her family. Her mother passed away during childbirth, leaving her father to raise Anna and her younger brother, Luke, who had been born with a disability. Her father, though strong and hardworking, never fully recovered from the loss of his wife. When Anna turned 18, her father also fell ill, and Anna found herself suddenly the head of her small household. With little money and her brother's growing needs, Anna had to abandon her dreams of leaving the village to find work in the city, and instead work tirelessly in the fields and as a maid in the homes of the wealthy landowners. They lived in a humble house made of weathered wood, with creaking floors and a thatched roof that barely held up against the harsh winter winds. Yet, despite these hardships, Anna never allowed her spirit to be crushed. Every morning, she rose before the sun, tending to the fields and taking care of her brother, who she loved with all her heart. Luke, though confined to a wheelchair, had a brilliant mind and loved to read. Anna, despite her limited time, always made sure to bring him books from the village market. In the evenings, after all the day's work was done, Anna would sit by the window in their small home, gazing out over the golden fields of wheat. The setting sun would cast a soft glow over the landscape, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. She often found herself dreaming of a different life, a life where she could provide better care for Luke, where she didn't have to work so hard every day, and where perhaps she might find someone to share her burdens. One day, as she made her usual trip to the village market to buy medicine for Luke, Anna noticed a young man she hadn't seen before. His name was David, and he was visiting the village with his family, who owned much of the land surrounding the valley. David had grown up in wealth, his family owning vast estates, but unlike many of the young men who had been born into privilege, David wasn't arrogant or dismissive. He had a quiet, observant nature, and his warm brown eyes seemed to always be searching for something beyond the surface. Anna first caught his attention as she struggled to carry a heavy sack of wheat. David, noticing her struggle, immediately walked over to help her. "Let me help you with that," he offered, a kind smile on his face. Anna, taken aback by his kindness, hesitated at first but eventually nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. As they walked together to the market, David couldn't help but be drawn to Anna's quiet strength and the way she carried herself with grace despite the hardships she clearly endured. From that day forward, David found reasons to visit the village more often. He would pass by Anna's house, offering to help with the fields or to bring medicine and supplies for Luke. At first, Anna was cautious of his attention, fearing that a man like David, from a wealthy family, could never truly understand her struggles. But as time went on, she began to open up to him, and they spent more time together. They would walk through the fields, talking for hours about their lives, their dreams, and their fears. David often spoke of his dissatisfaction with his family's lifestyle. Though he had been raised in luxury, he longed for something more meaningful. "I've always felt like there's more to life than just wealth and power," he confided in Anna one evening as they sat by the river, watching the water flow gently past them. "I envy you, Anna. You've faced so much, but you remain kind, strong, and full of hope. I want that in my life too." Anna, though touched by his words, couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were too different. "But David," she said gently, You belong to a world that I could never be part of. Your family would never accept me. I'm just a poor girl with nothing to offer." David, determined, shook his head. "You have everything to offer, Anna. You have a heart, and that's worth more than all the riches in the world. I don't care what my family thinks. I love you." Anna's heart swelled with emotion, but she hesitated. She knew how hard life could be, and she didn't want to be the cause of any more pain or hardship for David. "David, I love you too," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes, "but I can't ask you to choose me over your family. You deserve a better life." But David wouldn't hear of it. "My life is with you, Anna. I don't care about the wealth or the status. I care about you." Despite their love for each other, the pressures from David's family began to weigh heavily on them. His parents, upon learning of his growing affection for Anna, were furious. They demanded that David break off all contact with her. "She's beneath you," his mother said coldly one evening at dinner. "You have a duty to the family, and that does not include wasting your time with some poor girl who can't offer you anything." David's father, always the pragmatist, added, "You need to marry someone who can bring something to the table. Land, wealth, connections. This Anna girl has nothing." David's heart sank. He knew his parents would never understand his love for Anna, and he didn't want to lose them. But he also couldn't imagine a life without her. Torn between his love for Anna and his family's expectations, David became increasingly distressed. Meanwhile, Anna could sense the tension growing. She could see the toll it was taking on David, and she began to question whether their love was worth all the pain it was causing him. One night, after a particularly emotional argument with his parents, David came to Anna's house. "I don't know what to do," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you, but my parents, they'll never accept us." Anna, though her heart ached, knew what she had to do. "David," she said softly, "maybe it's better if we don't marry. I don't want to cause you any more pain. You've done so much for me, and I'll never forget that, but I don't want to be the reason you lose your family." David's face crumpled, and for the first time he felt truly lost. "But I can't live without you, Anna. You're everything to me." With tears streaming down her face, Anna took his hands in hers. "I love you, David, but sometimes love isn't enough. You need your family, and I can't ask you to give them up for me." They embraced, holding each other tightly, knowing that this might be the last time they'd ever be together. When they finally let go, both their hearts were shattered. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Anna threw herself into her work, caring for her brother and trying to push thoughts of David from her mind. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget him. She wondered how he was, whether he had moved on, and whether he still thought about her. David, too, struggled to move on. Though he continued to work with his family and fulfill his duties, there was always a piece of him that felt incomplete. His thoughts were constantly drawn back to Anna, the way she smiled, the sound of her laugh, the quiet strength that had captivated him from the start. Years passed, and though the pain had dulled, neither Anna nor David had ever truly forgotten their love. Then, one day, Anna received devastating news. Luke had fallen gravely ill. His condition had worsened, and despite her best efforts, Anna couldn't afford the medicine or the care he needed. She stayed by his side, doing everything she could to comfort him, but as the days went on, it became clear that without help, Luke might not survive. In desperation, Anna reached out to the village doctor, but even he couldn't offer much hope without proper treatment. Word of Luke's illness quickly spread through the village, and soon enough it reached David. Despite the years that had passed, David's love for Anna had never faded. The moment he heard about Luke's condition, he dropped everything and rushed to Anna's house. When he arrived, he found her sitting by her brother's bedside, her face pale and lined with worry. "Anna," David said softly, stepping into the room. "I'm so sorry. Let me help you." Anna looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "David? Why are you here? You shouldn't be." "I never stopped loving you," he interrupted, kneeling beside her. "I'll do whatever it takes to help Luke. Just let me be here for you." Though she hesitated at first, Anna knew she needed David's help. Together, they worked tirelessly to care for Luke. And with David's resources, they were able to get the medicine and treatment he needed. Slowly, Luke began to recover, and for the first time in years, Anna allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. David's presence reignited feelings she had buried long ago, but she was still cautious. After all, nothing had truly changed between them. His family would still disapprove, and the world they came from remained worlds apart. As the weeks passed and Luke's health steadily improved, Anna and David found themselves spending more time together. They would sit on the porch of Anna's small house, talking as the sun set behind the hills, casting a warm glow over the village. Their conversations flowed easily, and Anna began to feel the walls she had built around her heart slowly crumbling. But every time she allowed herself to hope, the fear of reality returned. One evening, after a long day of work and caring for Luke, Anna and David sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars twinkle in the sky. It was peaceful, and for a brief moment, it felt as if the rest of the world didn't exist. David turned to her, his eyes soft but serious. "Anna," he began, "I've spent these last few years trying to live the life my family wants for me, but it's been empty. I've accomplished everything they asked of me, helped with the family business, made the right connections, played the perfect son, but none of it means anything without you." Anna looked down at her hands, feeling the weight of his words. "David, I don't doubt your feelings, but your family will never accept me. They made that clear before, and I'm sure nothing has changed." David reached out, gently lifting her chin so she would meet his gaze. "It doesn't matter anymore," he said firmly. "I don't need their approval, their money, or their influence. I've saved enough to start a life on my own, and I want to start it with you. I don't care if it's hard, and I don't care if they disown me. You're the only person I've ever truly wanted." Anna's heart raced. She had dreamed of hearing those words, but the reality of the situation still terrified her. She had spent so long pushing him away, convinced that their love would only lead to more heartbreak. Yet here he was, willing to sacrifice everything for her. Tears welled in her eyes as she struggled to find the right words. "David, I don't want you to give up your family for me," she said softly. "What if things get difficult? What if you regret it later?" David shook his head, his expression unwavering. "I won't. I know what I want, and it's you. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Anna felt the tears spill over as she threw her arms around him, holding him tightly. "I love you, David," she whispered through her tears. "I've always loved you." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, the weight of the years and the struggles they had faced melting away in the warmth of their embrace. For the first time in a long while, Anna allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could have the happiness they both longed for. The next morning, David told his parents of his decision. Predictably, they were furious. His mother couldn't believe he would throw away his future for a poor village girl, and his father warned that if David chose Anna, he would no longer be welcome in the family. But David stood firm. "I'm done living by your rules," he said calmly. "I've made my decision, and nothing you say will change my mind." With that, he packed his things and left his family's estate, knowing that there would be no turning back. It was a painful parting, But as he walked away, he felt a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced in years. He was walking toward the life he truly wanted, a life with Anna. They were married in a simple ceremony, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Anna's small circle of friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate their love. And though it wasn't the grand, opulent wedding that David's family would have expected, it was perfect. Anna's brother Luke, who had recovered remarkably well, stood proudly by her side, beaming with happiness. Despite the joy of the day, David couldn't help but feel the absence of his family. He had hoped, deep down, that they might come around, but when they didn't show up, he tried to push the sadness aside. This was his choice, and he knew it was the right one. After the wedding, David and Anna moved into a small house on the outskirts of the village, where they began building their life together. It wasn't always easy. The transition from David's life of privilege to a more modest existence was a challenge, and there were moments when the weight of their decision felt heavy. But through it all, their love for each other never wavered. They faced every obstacle together, their bond only growing stronger with each passing day. As the years went by, they created a life filled with love, laughter, and kindness. They welcomed their first child, a daughter with bright eyes and a curious mind, and later a son who inherited his father's gentle spirit. They taught their children the values they held dear: kindness, generosity, and the importance of standing by the ones you love, no matter the cost. Though David's parents never fully reconciled with their son, they eventually softened over time. When their first grandchild was born, they quietly reached out. And though the relationship remained strained, it was a small step toward healing. Anna and David grew old together, watching their children grow and their village change. Though their journey had been filled with trials, they never once regretted the choices they had made. They had built a life based on love, respect, and mutual support, something far more valuable than wealth or status. One evening, many years later, Anna and David sat on the porch of their home, now surrounded by the laughter of their grandchildren playing in the yard. The sun was setting, casting a familiar golden glow over the fields, just as it had the first time they had sat together all those years ago. Anna leaned her head on David's shoulder, a contented smile on her face. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she murmured. David nodded, wrapping his arm around her. "We have," he agreed, his voice filled with quiet pride. "And I wouldn't change a thing." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the horizon. They had faced so many obstacles, and yet here they were, still together, still in love, and still finding joy in the simple things. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, they both knew that in the end, it wasn't wealth or power that had given their lives meaning. It was love. The love they had fought so hard for, and the love that had carried them through every hardship. And so, they lived out the rest of their days in peace, surrounded by the family they had built, always grateful for the journey they had taken together. Their love, tested and true, had proven that with each other, they could overcome anything. The end.